Deci am la output, da?
Output, nu. Aici.
Aici trebuie să schimb,
da?
Da,
doar aici. E ok. Și la input, verifică și la input.
Ai rămas ăla, da.
Line, ok.
Hai, dar nu știu cum să facem o probă. Sunt dacă ne aude Marius. Marius, ești conectat pe Facebook cu ceva?
Stai că îți dau drumul, ziceam de...
Dă-te mai încolo un pic, ca să facem o probă, să dacă ne aude Marius pe Facebook sau așa. Adică dacă merge pe online și...
Au. 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, test.
Da, vezi că output-ul nu pot să-l verific acum.
Poftim?
Output-ul nu pot să-l verific acum.
Test. În ce output-ul? În output-ul. Merge? E ok.
Nu știu, ce vorbesc ăia din online.
Se întoarce sigur că ăia din...
Ok, vedem atunci că schimbăm lucrurile.
Output-ul e linia nouă, intrată, da. Aia nu pot să verifica.
Da, știi cum pot să verific? Deci vorbește acolo. Pe Zoom.
Am face microfon. De fapt, microfoanele...
Hai un pic, că vreau doar să văd. Mai ești pe YouTube? Lasă-mă. N-a nimic dacă faci un pic de microfon. Nu mai vreau să aud Intră, Marius, intră un pic cu telefonul pe Facebook și du-te pe acolo, dacă auzi. Numai că să facem microfonie.
Dar de ce nu se face microfonie? Stai. Test.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our third plenary session. I see we have a lot of people online. I'm going to ask if Mr. Ripochet is online. Can he hear us? Can you hear us, sir? Because we wanted to make a short change to our schedule and have a different order, but in order to do that, we would need to see if the general can hear us. That's one of these risks with going online with technology. We have to wait and see if he can join us. Da, avem de așa ceva în plus? Okay. So until the general will be able to join us, since Mr. Ripochet is director at the European Defence Agency, we'll start with a short clip from the European Defence Agency to present his institution, and then hopefully we'll have him online so we can get on with our presentation for today. Okay, so as soon as we are ready. It's not a big drama, so don't worry about it. Just to let you know, so today's plenary session should comprise different visions, both on cybersecurity and on the European Union's vision on emerging technology impact on defense and building military capabilities. So we are going to shift to this area today following the discussions we had yesterday. We also had, I think, section panel at the end of today's presentations here. We're going to see how that goes as well when we have all the participants joining us in the room. He has joined us? Okay. So, Mr. Ripochet, can you hear me? Pe chat, pe chatul deschis. Good morning, Mr. Ripochet. Can you hear us?
He said yes. Can you hear me?
Morning. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm trying to put the video on, but not working here.
So I'm going to go ahead and introduce you, General, and then I'm going to give you the floor so you can begin your presentation. Is that okay, sir?
Yeah, fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. So, Brigadier General Jean-François Ripochet is, as I've told you, Director at the Research, Technology and Innovation for the European Defence Agency. He was appointed on June 2014 as Research and Technology Director at the Strategy Directorate of DGA at the French MOD Procurement Agency. He began his career at the DGA in 1998 at the Tactical Mission Program Service as an engineer. He then became responsible for the Polyfem fiber optic missile demonstrator program in cooperation with Germany and Italy. In 2001, he took charge of the Tactical UAVs Program Office. From 2005, he was appointed head of the RT Office of the Weapon System Directorate. He has worked on many projects in this area, and Brigadier General Jean-François Ripochet will deliver his keynote speech today on the topic of the European Defense Agency's vision about existing and future challenges and opportunities related to emerging disruptive technologies in defense. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'll try to share my screen. I'm sorry, I have an issue with my video, so you can only see the background image of EDA. Please tell me if you see the slides.
Yes, we can see them, sir.
Good, thank you. I'll start with a short video that we have done on the topic.
Sure.
Move to the slideshow mode. Okay.
We cannot hear the sound of the clip, sir, but I think you can turn it on from your side.
So, sorry, I thought maybe you didn't have the sound. It's maybe not easy, but you can find this video on our website or on YouTube if you look at it, and you add the subtitles. Anyway, what is important here is that really this topic of emerging disruptive technology is going on in the forefront of our concerns and also work today. And what are EDTs? We categorize those. There are many definitions available, but as complex technologies, but more important, with the potential to revolutionize future military capabilities. I mean, and not only by their performance, but also by the way they are used by the soldiers, and also changing the balance between the powers. And they do so because they make the current capabilities obsolete, and this could result in a substantial foreign policy or military advantage. You have many examples, and on the next slide I will come more into details on the areas that are currently recognized as emerging disruptive technologies. But yeah, new advanced material, artificial intelligence, of course, including big data and quantum technologies at large, including quantum computing. But you can also, I think of robotics and autonomous systems. The impact of biotechnologies is really important. You may have seen also in the news all around personal equipment systems. It would really change the reaction time that that the defense operators would do that. The way space is approached with new space is really also disruptive. It was really before reserved to a few countries to be able to launch a satellite. Now almost anybody, any university can do it. And once again, quantum technologies. Many people think about quantum computers when this term is used, but the new sensors that you could get with quantum technologies, quantum-based technologies, are really also promising. So the fact that you have all these areas back on the forefront pose a new set of threats, and it's no surprise it comes with the return of strategic competition between nations or powers, and it's also leads us to think that there's a need to improve the defensive system. What is important in the field of emerging disruptive technologies is that it's not only it's an ecosystem. It's not only the ability to produce the systems, but you will be able to do so only if you have a research and development ecosystem with plans and activities in the long run. You cannot keep the pace if you didn't start long ago by research or developments or demonstration. And let me move to why we think it's really changing in the foreign policy. Is that if you look at the situation just after the end of the USSR, you could say that for Western Europe, you had the US with the technological superiority, EU at a good level, and all this was the guarantee of superiority, also in the military domain. Then you had Russia, of course, great power, but at the end of an era, and China not there yet. If we do nothing, what do we see? We see that China, USA, Russia, which are unitary powers, are investing a lot on those technologies, and that if EU does nothing, we will lag behind, and we are not even sure that the US can guarantee that our bloc has the technological superiority. And let me illustrate with really simple cases, hypothetical cases. That, for example, if somebody masters quantum communication, for example, with quantum key distribution, and say it's us, then it's good because we can keep on communicating safely with the confidentiality of our information, integrity. We can authenticate the sender and receiver. And then, of course, you all know how important this enabler is for military operations and all our policies at large. On the other end, in another hypothetical example, let's say that somebody else is mastering the possibility to use unmanned drone swarms, really autonomous, not just a lot of them coordinated, then you have a big problem with your defenses. That means that maybe you cannot go in areas where you would like to operate. Maybe you run the risk that your defense will not be able to cope with so many objects. So your own goals, foreign policy goals at large, would be probably much harder to reach, and I include them in the defensive parts of the territory here. So what do we see in our in the landscape? As I mentioned, you have the United States of America, China, and Russia. They are investing a lot in the field of EDP. There's a bit of let's say communication or even propaganda in what is shown, but it's clear that at least China and USA they are investing a lot in all the fields. Russia may be more focused on hypervelocity, not on AI, but also they have a strong background in quantum systems. Europe has the potential to invest and study all EDPs, but currently the fragmentation of the landscape in Europe is also a handicap, and that's reflected in the past, in the pace of which we are embracing the issue. And of course, China and USA are really going fast. Russia has less budget available for this. The economic situation is not the same, but still, where they invest in very good technological industries. An important feature of this domain is also that it's really an area where military and civilian bodies are intertwined. It means that universities, companies, sometimes non-traditional, military solutions provider, all are working together with the support of their government. That's how it works. So it's also connected to the broader scientific and technological advantage of the countries, of the blocks. It may lead to increase industrial competitiveness if you invest in that. And there's of course the question of the security of supply of these most advanced and I would also like to maybe mention here before I move to how Europe is preparing on this, that of course for us in that are also in NATO, there's a question of interoperability and maintaining the interoperability with the allies. If we are lagging behind, that might be an issue. So, how is Europe preparing for the EDP revolution? Fortunately, I would say we are not starting from scratch, and things are already happening. Even those some initiatives that may be still fragmented. So a few examples. So first, in the EDA, we had already 67 ongoing research projects with smaller budget that we can link to EDPs or project ideas that we could propose for the European Defense Fund. In our framework, we are also preparing an EDP action plan at EDA level, and I will come back say a few words, and hopefully it will be approved by our steering board next December. And also, the European Commission at large has really realized that you need to foster those synergies between defense and also civilian industries, and in particular space, which is which has a lot of similarities with defense, to make sure the effort is more focused and that the investments have a bigger impact. And so they have issued an action plan on synergies between civil defense and space industries with some actions, and they should issue in November, I think, a roadmap on how to tackle some of those technologies. And I think that probably you will find advanced semiconductors, materials, maybe AI, space, probably an area where something could be done. And I can, on these slides, you have examples of what has been already done at a smaller scale. But already 5 years ago, the work has started on swarming with the pilot project, which was the precursor to the preparatory action on defense research and then the European Defense Fund. So we have actors in Europe, be them small or medium industries, research and technology organization, of course, larger systems that are already have skills on the domain. And as mentioned, swarming can really be a game changing if you manage to make sure that an operator can safely and still be in control of many objects, because you can't have an operator or a team of operators behind every single role. Another example on the preparatory action of defense research is the electromagnetic railgun. What it would change in the field of artillery, be it naval or land artillery, is that the range would be widely increased, and the projectile would also go much faster than the usual one. So this would be really a game changer, and also the fact that it relies on electric power and not powder is also a game changer in terms of logistics. So EU is supporting those projects, and so we are not starting from scratch, although there's still a lot to do. One important thing to do when we talk about emerging disruptive technologies is, of course, that it's an area of really evolving nature, and maybe we are not all on the same line when it comes to say these are the most important emerging disruptive technologies, or these are the technologies we need to invest upon. And that's why EDA is here. I mean, is to find the common ground between participating member states and yeah, try to find the areas where there is appetite to cooperate. So an important activity for us internally, but also on behalf of our member states, is technology watch and technology foresight activity. The idea is to be able to identify weak signals coming not only from the military domain, but also from the civil world. And so we have adapted tools from the Commission to detect those signals. We have workshops that are open to, of course, the ministries of defense, but also the industry and academia from our participating member states. And we have what we call a technology foresight exercise. I would say a word about it. All this is not for the sake of technology. So the last line is very important. It's to feed the technology perspective of the capability development plans, because all what is really different when we talk about emerging disruptive technologies in the field of defense compared to the civil domain is that is the application. It's the military application which is really specific. The reliability is not the same. The availability cannot be the same. I think you all know that on the field, you cannot wait for 24 hours to have your system repaired. It has to work when you need it. Those kind of things are really different. The environments, thermal or weather can be more extreme. All those things make the defense application particular. So that's all really has to be taken into account, and that's the focus here. Then you need to think also out of the box. So that's why we had an exercise that started that will run before summer. Also to, as I said, include the weak signals, but think about all the global implications of what comes with this technology. So environment, climate change, policies, societal impact, whatever it takes, to have also this broader view to make sure you are prepared and that you do not miss anything. If you want more detail on this exercise, we have you can go to our website and you will find the presentation of the methodology, how it was performed, and also already some scenarios or some of the documentation we use to help the group of experts think about this, what will be the warfare in 10, 20 years. So I invite you to go there. I think it's easy to read, not too much material, and it will give you a flavor of what we will put into the what is likely to happen. It is an update of the capability development plan next year after the strategic compass is approved beginning of next year also. So what from EDS perspective, what could it look like for a way ahead on emerging disruptive technology? I think you have on the slides the what it takes. First, a goal. I will start from the back end. You need capability, so you do it for capability. That's really important. So it's mastering those technologies in view of fielding them to in our force. It starts, if I come to the front, come back to the front, with early detection. In our action plan, we want to structure the process, make sure it's shared at the EU level. So the detection of the technologies, what the research roadmaps, what is needed, and also what our partners and also competitors do. As we think it's important that we share a common view on the landscape. This will lead to the identification of collaborative opportunities because, as was mentioned, you need to focus. You need to invest sometimes a fair share of money, and that's one of the added value of cooperation, is that you can also share the risk, share the budget, and also if it works, then you are part of a game changer and not lagging behind. Really, you have hands-on experience of how it works. So that's the current view. It's being discussed with our member states currently, and will be finalized end of this year, and hopefully we can then also accelerate on the topic, and then in the coming years, so that the youth once again is not lagging behind. That's the end of my presentation. I thank you for your attention. I once again apologies for the technical issue, and also very sorry that I cannot stay for longer. I have some time now for question and answers right now if it does not disrupt your timing. But I'll be happy to answer that, and thank you again for having EDA.
Thank you very much for joining us, for agreeing to take part in our conference. It's a big honor to have you here and to see the European Defence Agency vision, which was, I think, a really interesting one for all our participants. I can note some of the ideas, starting with revolutionary technologies, the new set of threats that you presented, ending with this technology and foresight activities at EDA. That was really interesting as well. What intrigued, I think, all of us was the 2030 scenario, and what would happen, especially if there is no action inside of the EU try and not find ourselves in 2013 to this scenario. We have just a couple of questions. We'll do the question and answer now round now as you asked, in order to free some time afterwards, and of course we'll end your participation here. So one of the questions we had is actually on the last part of your presentation, with the way aheads that the EU has. The collaborative projects that you talked about, are they going to be within EU, for EU member states, or they are going to include other partners like NATO, US, and so on?
That's a good question. I think there's room for both, but maybe in some areas we need to have an EU solution, especially if you have you start from the scientific and technology base that you already have in EU. We have very good AI companies or universities in Europe, and maybe they can provide solutions to the military domain without where it's, especially in areas where it's important not to have a black box to know what it does for the certification and validation of it. Then of course it's this should not be against our alliance, and also sometimes maybe it's better to join an effort which is much more advanced than trying to catch up. I guess the idea also of this action plan is to identify where EU level cooperation is more relevant than NATO-wide, let's say, cooperation. So, and once again, it's not a competition; it's those should be complementary.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer. And we also have a question from our course participants. So you presented the ADTs, insisted on this part, and comparing them to, I don't know, emerging technologies, disruptive technologies, and other type of technologies. Could you please elaborate a little bit on the difference between ADTs and all of these other technologies from a concept point of view in this strategic landscape that you have presented them?
I think it's we could talk for hours about the definition. Of course, the disruptive nature of the technology you often see only afterwards. That's also one of the difficulties. What I'd like to say is what is required is the need to explore. And that's difficult because of the budget constraints, of course. But if you do not see what I don't know what lasers can do for defense, and that others do, then you really run the risk of lagging behind. And that's one risk. And the other risk is also that if you do not do it yourself or part of it yourself, you may think, because there's a lot of communication here, that those systems have a greater potential than what they really have. So imagine that's really because you see on all domains, and civilian domain is really important, that some technologies have a great potential. Disruptive, unfortunately, it's a kind of a bet or a risk that you take, but that's a field of high risk, high reward if you go there, and you have to be able to put your hands on and stop quickly if the concretization of the potential is not there. But then you have experience. I mean, that's why I prefer to use stop fast than fail fast in this domain. Because when you stop fast, you have an information that is not maturing out, or that's not going to give you the capabilities you thought it would. So I know I did not really answer the full questions, but we could really talk for hours about what is emerging in this specific technology.
Yes, yes, it's true. And we thank you for, for again sharing this part with us. If there are any other questions from the audience, well, I think with that we conclude your presentation. I'd like to once again thank you for joining us and giving us a little bit of insight into the European Defence Agency's vision. And we do hope that our collaboration will continue, and hopefully you'll join us for our next conferences as well. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you once again. I wish you all the best for the future, and really a pleasure to be and an honor to be here today. So see you soon, I hope, for real. So bye.
Bye, and have a good day. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we can now move to our second keynote speaker of the day, Professor Ioan Mircea Pașcu, who is a professor at the National University of Political Studies and Administration. He has been Vice President of the European Parliament and Vice Chair of the Committee on Foreign Affairs and Minister of Defense of Romania from 2000 to 2004, ensuring NATO membership for Romania. He has also been Presidential Counselor, Head of the Foreign Policy Department of the Romanian Presidential Administration. He has a lot of actually political background as a deputy of the Romanian Parliament, member of the Romanian Parliament from 1996 to 2007, and also in terms of his professor background, he has started actually as a professor at the International Relations and National School of Political and Administrative Studies, where he has been Dean of the Faculty of International Relations, National School of Political and Administrative Studies from 1990 to 1996. He has also been Chair of International Relations at the National School of Political and Administrative Studies from 2004 and to 2009. Professor Mircea Pașcu is a member of the Strategic Advisors Group of the U.S. Atlantic Council, the International Institute for Strategic Studies, a member of the Consultative Committee of the Center for Democratic Control of Armed Forces. Sir, you have the floor. Thank you for joining us here today.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. And I would say, you know, that you failed to mention that now I am in the phase of taking care of my grandchildren, which is a normal conclusion of a career, whatever type of career we have. I would like to speak a little bit about the context in which we have these developments, which we just saw. Then I would speak a little bit about some trends in military technology, and in the end, my reaction to the presentation of Eda. I specifically asked the organizers to allow me to react to what the representative of Eda would do, and that's why, you know, I prepared a number of points. And I would like to conclude my presentation with those points. First, I would say, you know, that with the end of the Cold War, the international system entered into a period of transition from the bipolar system, meaning, you know, the US and Soviet Union, towards a multipolar system with more centers of power. And this is a general trend which is continuing today. But at the same time, within this trend, we saw an increased great power competition. And within this great power competition, taking shape a new bipolar relationship between China and the United States. We also see less and less multilateralism and more unilateralism. And actually, the pandemic is encouraging the withdrawal of the state inside in order to solve the problems raised by the pandemic, and that is not encouraging collaboration. It runs counter collaboration. Social distancing runs counter, societal links. So we see there are some divisive trends here, and we do not know yet what will be their final impact. As it comes to military technology, you already saw we have a number of fields which are very much under the scrutiny of specialists. First is sensors, and then, with this category of sensors, we can find out a lot of things. And they can be placed on a number of platforms, which in turn, are modernized, and therefore the collection of data is then worked on through these computing technologies, and we have a final result. And if we want to extrapolate, we place this with some artificial intelligence, and we can get, some results. The problem, is that, as we saw in the beginning in that movie, we had one disruptive technology after hundreds of years, up until now. So it was gunpowder, for instance, one, which has been mentioned, and secondly, nuclear weapons, which have been mentioned. And all of a sudden now, we have a number of emerging disruptive technologies. Meaning, that each one is disruptive in itself, but in combination with the others is even more disruptive. So I think, that is the difference. We have reached a point in which science is increasing incrementally, exponentially. And therefore, the fact that we can combine various traces of development is even more complicating the situation, the picture. I think, that from this point of view, I cannot predict, that there won't be a Second World War type of war in the future. When it comes to that, that's the end of civilization, and we cannot exclude that possibility, either from error or from planning or for whatever. But essentially, we can say that most of the military engagements in the future would be fought by robots, less and less by people, and more by robots. And secondly, for the very special situation, then we will employ special forces. And I think that the combination of robotics and special forces would give the name of the future, most of the future encounters, or whatever fights, whatever conflicts we would like to name. I would say, that these disruptive technologies are a new field of study. The United States, I was told, by the chief of Mr. Ripochet back in 2018, that was the Spanish flu, 2018, that the United States were spending 90 billion every year for studying disruptive technologies. And the European Union would not benefit from it because there was no exchange between the two entities. And only now, European Union is starting to get really involved into this, seeing, as you saw, the projection for 2030, in which the European Union would be the last one, after it has been second in 1991. So this is a gradual loss of technological edge on the part of Europe. Now, I would like to congratulate EDA because they are doing their job. And I would say, that the most important thing in this case is that EDA is an intergovernmental institution, body. So it's not a common body belonging to the Commission. It is an intergovernmental in which countries are sending representatives and they represent their countries. And this is saying, because in a way, this indicates whatever EDA does is a reflection of what the countries want EDA to do and the governments of their countries. It's not what the bureaucrats or the mandarins in Brussels are wanting to do. So therefore, this is important for EDA, and I think, you know, that we cannot ask more from EDA, because in the end, the decision stays with the member states. But it is important that the member states are represented in EDA. I would like to say, you know, that when we speak about strategic autonomy, are we really autonomous strategically or not? And for what type of military activities are we? Are we in terms of defense? Can Europe defend itself as an entity, as such? Can Europe defend the member countries the way NATO does? So these are questions which have to be answered. Strategic autonomy would mean that Europe would be able to undertake operations and have the capabilities to perform them efficiently. But we still have a lack of many things, like, for instance, you know, strategic airlift. And you saw the situation in evacuation of Kabul, in which practically the European countries have been forced to come up with improvisations, appeals to civilian operators, compared to the United States, which has been able, in spite of all the discussion about the debacle of that withdrawal, or whatever name you would like to give it, it was a success. It was more than 120,000 people which were evacuated in a short number of days. And that is something. But essentially, this does not erase the entire situation by that rapid decision to evacuate, the lack of consultation with the allies and other things which will have to be addressed, you know, in the future in our discussion, transatlantic discussions. So I would say, you know, the strategic autonomy is a concept. It has been in discussion in the European Union for some years now, but the problem has been that nobody wanted to define precisely what strategic autonomy is. Because if you define it, then, you know, you will have to say, well, this is strategic autonomy and this is not strategic autonomy. But leaving it like this, you know, in this cloud, you can pretend that everything could be strategic autonomy or not. So some lack of clarity, intentional lack of clarity existed there. Others went further and they said strategic autonomy means to buy European. Forget about the United States, buy European, and that would give us strategic autonomy. Well, I think, you know, that strategic autonomy is strategic autonomy. I mean, I'm autonomous in fulfilling undertaking and fulfilling a military operation or whatever I would like to do. So I think, you know, that this is an area where we have to separate very well the concepts. Strategic autonomy does include industrial sovereignty. So inevitably this is happening, but we have to make sure that one is not replacing completely the other. I mean, interchangeable use of the terms, because they are different concepts. So I think, you know, that the main problem of everything, you know, we do in the European Union, including EDA's activity, which I said, you know, they can be congratulated for what they are doing. But you see, they have a lot of seminars. They can make the governments aware of where the technology is driving, what we do have to keep the pace or enlist into the trends, but we cannot force the governments to do it. And how do we translate this scientific or whatever, work which EDA does into capabilities, into projects, common projects? This is something which, it's a handicap of the European Union, because this is the nature of the European Union. It's a collection of equal states, sovereign states, which have to say yes, otherwise it doesn't work. This is the first thing. So decisional process is one thing. It's a handicap compared to any other field of activity. If you imagine, if you remember, we had the crisis of 2008 and 2009. Financial markets were functioning at the speed of light, and the Council took decisions for the European Union in terms of months. So how do we react quickly in this situation? It will always be there, because this is the way the European Union works. Then there is another element. You see, there are common projects, as 60-some were already announced. And I think that this is, okay, the states who participate will benefit of the results. They can share the results with others. But at the same time, the effort is not entirely funded through the European Defense Fund or other money coming, commonly. It is mainly done through national effort. And if I am making an effort like this, why should I share it with you? That's the question which is in everybody's mind of a decision maker in those countries. It's the similar situation with intelligence. I gather intelligence, which is very valuable. Why should I share it with you, endangering my sources, and so on and so forth? So you see, these are inescapable obstacles which we have to overcome in the European Union if we really want to make an effective European Union in terms of security and defense. And I would say that the money coming, common money coming, for this sort of research and development and capabilities has been reduced. When I left the European Parliament in 2019, it was immediately after the vote on the European Defense Fund. And the sum of money which we voted has been 13 billion. That was prior to the adoption of the next financial framework, 21-27. Because when the financial framework has become a reality, the sum of money there has been 7-point-some billion. So the money there was reduced, but at the same time, the defense budgets of Germany and France have been increased, which means that the national effort has become more important and still remains more important compared to these common funds, which are devoted to such research and development of capabilities. And now I think that the basic problem which we have to sort out is that everything the European Union does, and it is, I would say, laudable that European Union has involved itself into this, because up until now this has been considered a national prerogative, not a common prerogative, has been, the fact that has been increasing the awareness of the countries. Determine the countries, that this is worth thinking of, worth engaging into it. But as I said, how do you translate EDA's seminars, which are very, very advanced in terms of, and they are doing their job. How do you translate it into capabilities in the end? And the problem is, that this takes time. This takes time. And sometimes the threats are pressing. And do I have enough time, to come to invest 10 years from now on into such a project on an emerging disruptive technology and wait for the result in 10 years? This is the question, because we live in a world in which the threats are not dependent, are not correlated with our pace of research and development. And sometimes we have to react to this buying from the shelf, buying from the shelf. And when it comes to buying from the shelf, then here, you know, so buy European, buy American. I think, you know, that we would have, and any responsible decision maker would buy whatever is affordable, the quickest acquisition in order to respond to the threat. And I think, you know, that here we have a discrepancy between the European Union projects and the real threat analysis which every country together we have. I believe, you know, that this is one obstacle which we have to overcome in the future. And I think, you know, that sometimes we have to be very, I would say, harsh in our judgment. Do we invest money into a railway hypersonic gun? I'm wondering, you know, because I remember that we had Dike Berta in the First World War. We had the similar thing, you know, in the Second World War. They were very seldomly used. And today I have other possibilities of penetrating the defense of the enemy hypersonically, which means Mach 5. Instead of bringing a gun on the railway and shooting that projectile which would go at hypersonic speed. So this reminds me of a situation existing immediately after the discovery of the atomic weapons, when the US Army has transformed the David Crockett, which is a recoilless gun mounted on a jeep, into a nuclear David Crockett. So imagine, you know, you would shoot at a short distance, which would affect your troops. What would be the result when you have other means of incapacitating the enemy? But this was, it was carried away because this was the, shall we say, the trend, the fashion. Everybody wanted, you know, to have nuclear weapons because nuclear weapons meant money. And therefore, you know, it started to filter down from the aviation, which was the first platform delivering such weapons, to the other branches. And I think, you know, that this recoil gun here for hypersonic thing is more or less something which I would not invest in. I would not invest in. Imagine Romania investing into such a project when we have to slow down our trains because the status of our lines is what it is. So, but somebody does because this is a project, it has been accepted. So I think we should be very, we should have a Hawkeye's view on the battlefield, the next battlefield or whatever, if we have a battlefield. And then, you know, to see really if it's worth investing into such projects or we should choose something else to do that. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, very much for the speech. And if I'm allowed to make a joke with what you ended with the gun and its history, perhaps some people are becoming nostalgic, and that's why it seems that, always in some point in history, these guns are, So I'm glad you also mentioned off-the-shelf procurement for the sole reason that, as you can see, we have a lot of course participants here, and we talk about that in our courses, and we have mentioned with some of them, we have got already to that part. We are going to get with the others about when you talk about cost estimating techniques about off-the-shelf procurement, so it's really good that you brought that up as well. As a first question, if we have had basically two presentations that show the willingness of the European Union to, let's say, jump in defense spending, And what basically draws their attention is the common security defense policy that the European Union has developed. Can we talk about the elephant in the room and ask the basic question here? Are we looking at complementarity between NATO and EU or a competitiveness landscape? Because we have countries here present today, like Romania and Poland, that are in the end members of both organizations. And will it be a duplicated effort for them or not? That would be, I think, a first question on which we can have a discussion.
The Treaty of Lisbon, which is enlisting, the treaties signed before between the European Union countries, is saying very clearly in Article 42 that the defense of the member countries of the European Union who are members of NATO is ensured by NATO. By NATO. So there is no discussion that one would be used, to supplement the other. Yes, we can do more in this respect. For instance, increasing our awareness, cooperating more, sharing more our intelligence, information, and so on and so forth. But essentially, NATO is in charge of our defense according to the treaties. And in the European Union, which is very much run by lawyers, I would say, because it's a very legalistic institution, this is fundamental. Secondly, we do not have two sets of armed forces. We have only one set of armed forces. And the military planners in NATO and the European Union have a hell of a time when they try to mix the obligations under EU and NATO to make free that unit for NATO employment after it has been fulfilling a role in EU and so on and so forth. So I think, that these two answers would show that NATO and the EU are more or less complementary. For instance, EU is very strong, I would say, in internal security. External security is for NATO. Then, beyond that, there is a tendency to say that Europe is in charge of the security around it, and meaning mainly Africa. And then, NATO is in charge of other further away threats. So more or less, these are the lines which are dominating now the thinking in these organizations. One word about this European army, which sometimes is brought into the discussion. It has been brought by the Brexiteers, very much so, although they knew very well that it's very difficult to create such a unique one European army. I mentioned this very clearly, that I don't trust in it, I don't believe in it. Because imagine, in order to change, shall we say, the defender of your security, meaning, it's not your own country, it's not your own government, but an entity like the European Union, you'll have to change the constitution. And that means, that every member countries would have to change the constitution accordingly, which is not an attractive solution for many of the member countries. Imagine Spain, for instance. If they open up the constitution for this change, what Catalonia would say. And this will be also probably a possibility for Barcelona not to be defeated by Real Madrid in the future. So, but this is something we have to reflect on that. Nobody has said, that all constitutions have to be changed. But this is the truth if we want to have a... Then secondly, you have two concomitant simultaneous threats. Shall we say one in the northeast of Europe and another one in the southwest of Europe. Both of them, shall we say, important. If you take into consideration that China is considering creating a military base in the Atlantic, on the coast of Africa. I read somewhere this information. I do not know whether it's true or not, but I have to take it into account as a possibility. You know, then where do you send the army first? Which one of the threats would be faced by this one army? Shall we divide it? If we divide it, then, you know, we lost, shall we say, the reason why we created this army, in order to be stronger than the individual components. So these are the types of questions which have to be asked when some would throw into the discussion the possibility of having a European army. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think we have a follow-up question exactly on this topic. I think you answered partially already. How could EU gain and maintain its competitive advantage in the field of defense and security without member states sharing resources and capabilities, including intelligence, innovation, and so on?
Well, it's not that we do not share. We share, but not sufficiently, I would say. There are some limits to what we share amongst ourselves. So this is my answer to this. And I think, you know, that we can do a lot. We can do a lot up to the creation of a European army. The European Union of Defense. Actually, this is something which is being discussed. And this is something which is achievable through increasing coordination, mutual support, and so on and so forth. You see, there are some suggestions, especially coming from France, that we have to have a common threat analysis, a common culture, military culture. I'm wondering why we do not have it yet, because, you know, the officers functioning in the European Union have been functioning in NATO, and the reverse is also true. I cannot, and my students, you know, have asked me once, I said, how come do we need intelligence sharing or secret information sharing agreement between EU and NATO when the Ministry of Defense knows both of them? How can we prevent, you know, the people from the second floor to get to the third floor and discuss with their, You see, these are things which we have to, in a way, we have to humanize all these concepts and put them into the concrete, practical situation. And then we would reach these sort of situations to which we have to find a practical answer. If we don't have a practical answer, it remains an academic discussion like the one for centuries about the sex of the angels. So.
Yeah. If we have any questions from our audience, from other speakers, if not,
no, thank you.
I want just one, if you allow me, because you made a really interesting point today. You mentioned that
Only one?
No, but this one I particularly like. About strategic autonomy, you said, and sovereign industries, right? And the risk...
Industrial sovereignty.
Yeah, industrial sovereignty. And the risk that somehow, let's say, the country's interest will shift from one to the other completely. There will be, let's say, a change in actually what's happening as a change between the two. How close do you think we are in some parts of Europe to that, if we can have this?
No, we tend to look at it politically and to ignore the realities. And let me tell you, I was a rapporteur of a report on an initiative, DIDP, Defense Industrial Projects, you know, and this has been a first, shall we say, instance in which common money had been devoted or channeled towards the arms producers in Europe. And then all of them have come all of a sudden to my office. And I was congratulating them that towards the end of my tenure they found out where my office was, but only because I was a rapporteur here. And I discovered on that particular experience, I discovered how many links exist between these big arms producers across the Atlantic, amongst themselves, So I think, you know, that was some sort of a revelation, because they do not wait. They do not wait, you know, for the countries to approve an agreement of cooperation or something. They just establish it, you know, in practice. And how dependent they are on the other contribution, technological contribution. And this is a network which exists now, and we can build upon it. And we have to, rather than establish things which cut into this network of established relationships, we would have to create a framework which would allow them to flourish more. This would be, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, you know, an answer to this sort of situation. So there are a lot of such connections between the
that's why I asked.
Saab, for instance. Saab had a budget for research and development which was larger than what the European Union was presenting in this project. So you can imagine, you know, the kind of money we are talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for all these comprehensive answers. Thank you.
I would have to say goodbye because I have to run now. And let me thank you for your invitation. And let me tell you that if you keep this good habit of inviting us, Josh and myself, we will try to come here next time too. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to now move to our third panelist from this session. If he is online with us. Okay, so our next keynote speaker will be Brigadier General Anton Rog, who is the head of the National Cyberint Center within the Romanian Intelligence Service. The Cyberint is responsible for conducting 24/7 activities to discover, characterize, and proactively counter cyber threats against systems and networks critical to Romanian national security. Anton Rog has held various technical development positions, including software and system design. He has also served as a deputy director within Romanian Secret Service, IT, and Central Department. He will be delivering his speech today on cybersecurity challenges and opportunities, perspectives for Romania's cyber landscape, and I would say this is especially interesting as we have, as you know, one of our courses in information resource management, so I'm sure there'll be a lot of attention to this, and if you have questions, we'll ask at the end. Sir, good morning. Thank you for joining us. You have been given host rights, so I'll give the floor to you, and you can operate throughout your presentation.
Hello, and first of all, I'd like to thank the organizer for inviting me to this event. I really enjoyed the keynote speaker that they were ahead of me. Very interesting speeches, very interesting ideas. I'm the head of National Cyberint Center from within the Romanian Intelligence Service. And I want to share with you today a few things about what is happening, what was happening in Romania in the last, let's say, 1-2 years, and what is Romania doing in order to be better, to get better in the cybersecurity in general. Do I have control on the presentation, or should I say next slide?
You should try to move the slide, and we'll see if you have control. If you can move it, then you have control over it.
Well, I don't think I can. No.
It's a small arrow. You see the number of the slides.
Actually, I don't.
Okay,
no.
Then you can say move the slides, and we'll move the slides from.
Yes, please. So I would like to move to the first slide.
Okay, so. Okay, Okay.
You'll do that for me. So
Yes.
since I'm invited from the first time in this event, I would like to tell you a little bit about us. I'm not sure that everyone that is in this conference has the clear idea who the National Cyber Center is and what is his role. So we are one of the central units in the Romanian Intelligence Service that we are dealing with defending critical Romanian critical infrastructure against threats that are coming from a cyber domain. Actually, we are taking care of three main pillars. The most important one in this three main pillar is the one that it has to do with the state sponsor actors. And by state sponsor actor, I mean cybersecurity groups that are financed, conducted, infiltrated by intelligence agency or community of intelligence agency from states that are that at least in the cyber domain they have a hostile attitude towards Romania, against Romania. And in this field, we are talking about highly complex attacks that are performed against the Romanian government, Romanian institution, intelligence agencies, MOD, and so on. And we are those kind of attacks. We call them APT, Advanced Persistent Threat. Advanced because they are highly complex, persistent from two reasons. One is that if they don't manage to get into the network from the first time, they keep doing that. And the second valence from the persistent is that once they are there, they stay there for a long time. And threat, I don't have to translate it for you, is the right meaning of the word. So this is the most important pillar. What I can tell you is that you might think, well, Romania it's a small. I don't know. It's not in USA or Great Britain or whatever. It's a small country from the Southeast European side. No one is interested to use the cable to the computer in order to spy in Romania. Well, that is not true. At least since I'm the head of National Cyber Center from 2017 and even before, we were able to discover, I would say, a relevant number of APTs from more than one state that targeted the Romanian government, Romanian law enforcement agencies, intelligence agencies, and the Ministry of Defense. The second pillar that I would like to talk about, and it's part of our activity, is the cybercrime pillar. And in this pillar, we are not taking care of the common attacks that affect one or two people or one business or I don't know, part of an institution. We are talking about those cybercrime attacks that are affecting a large mass of people or I don't know. A relevant number of institutions. So those attacks that are above a threshold. And by cybercrime, we're talking about ransomware. And lately, in 2020 and 2021, the hackers, the cybercrime groups are not satisfied by doing classical ransomware. They are also doing double extortion. And what do I mean by that? I mean that they start to encrypt your data and they don't directly ask you for the cryptocurrency in order to give you the key to decrypt your data, to have access to your data. No. First, they give you a chunk of what they consider to be relevant data in decrypted, and they tell you, well, if you don't pay us, then we will make public your database or, I don't know, private information or sensitive information. And if you pay, then they say, okay, I won't make public your data. Now pay me again in order to give you the key that will allow you to decrypt your data and to have access. So in 2020 and 2021, we are talking about double extortion. Well, if we talk about cybercrime, then we talk about info stealers through social engineering campaign from, I don't know, phishing, smishing, vishing. So using all the possibilities in order to have access to the data. their main goal in the cybercrime is to get their hands on the money. That's so the financial goal here are the money. The third pillar that we are taking care of in the National Cyber Center has to do with hacktivism and cyber terrorism, or ideologically cybercrime motivation, I would say. Well, fortunately, in Romania, we do not have self-radicalized, so many self-radicalized people that are, I don't know, going to blow themselves up or place a bomb somewhere or do something kinetic or derail a train or something like that. So it's a very limited number of people, and we are monitoring all of them. What we see is more and more in the last year, it has to do with distributed denial of service, with defacement, with SQL injection. So those kind of attacks in which cybercrime group, ideologically motivated, are placing in I would say relevant website of relevant institution that has to do with fighting against COVID, hacking the website and placing their own idea in order to promote their anarchist idea, extremist idea, and so on. So these are the main three pillars. I would like to switch to the next slide, please. That would be what we are doing currently. Okay, a little bit about pandemic times. In the pandemic times, in the beginning of 2020, in the spring of 2020, we had what it is called lockdown. During the lockdown, all the public institutions and private company, they have to adjust their activity using the model work from home. What was very interesting at that time was that not most of them, almost all of them, were not prepared in order to adopt this model, this work from home model. What do I mean by that? I mean that they did not have like laptops, tablets, smartphone, whatever devices with in-place security scheme put on them in order to pass to the employees in order to work them from home. So they allow their employees to work their own devices that has no security policy applied on it. So the surface of attack in the lockdown period and a lot of time after that was exponentially larger than in regular times. You know, in the lockdown, everybody said, well, with the lockdown, we almost closed our business or we had less and less to work. In the lockdown, the ones that have to do with cybersecurity defense, they have to work almost 3 times more than usual. Lack of cyber hygiene was the second reason that it also increased the surface of attack, because people, most of the employees, they were not ready to work remotely. They were used to go to the office and use their internal workstation in the intranet, not over the internet. So the number of attacks that targeted employees of private companies and public institutions also increased exponentially. Lack of cybersecurity measures. I already told you that they allow them to use their devices, but more than that, they were not trained to use VPN, virtual private network. They were not ready to secure their central network as it was accessible from the internet and so on. So most of the hackers, most of the cybercrime group, they took advantage on this context, and the number of attacks really increased. What we did in this period, we did a lot of awareness. We went public with a lot of advices in order to tell them what to do to become more secure. Will you please move to the next slide? So we act at 3 levels, and we made them act at 3 levels in order to become more secure. First level was employees level. So we asked them, we told them that it's a very good idea to train and test the employees in order to prevent cybersecurity incidents. Actually, what is relevant here is that the public institution and private company, they don't have the culture of, on a regular basis, of testing their employees from a cybersecurity point of view. So what does such a test means? It means that using specialized companies, they run some email campaign against their employees to check how many of them will click the link and get infected in order to raise the awareness and so on. The second level that we addressed in order to increase the resilience, the cybersecurity resilience in Romania, was the IT admin level. And we told them, for example, yes, we know it's lockdown. Yes, we know we are in pandemic time, but the 1 or 2 employees, in order to perform their most sensitive activities with the root level, with the admin level, they should be done directly on the equipment and not remotely over the internet. And more than that, you should increase your bandwidth with your employees. You should apply security policies and so on. And the last level that we addressed was the institutional level. And we asked them, please cooperate with CERTRO, please cooperate with us, please listen to what we are telling to you. Please, if you don't have a cybersecurity company that is taking care of your network, now is the time to get into relation in the contractual relation with you in order to protect your data, to protect your employees, and finally to protect your business. I would like to go to the next slide. Okay. Now a little bit about the legal framework that is that Romania is putting in place in order to become more and more secure from a cybersecurity point of view. EU regulation. Well, since 2018, since December 2018, we managed to adopt the law 362, through which we passed to the Parliament the NIS directive, what it is called now the NIS 1 directive. And the NIS 1 the directive is very important in the civil area. That is the responsibility of the National Directorate for Cybersecurity, the ex-CERTRO, that is addressing those essential services that has to do with banking, energy, health, I don't know, water distribution, and so on. And also the service providers have to do with digital, online markets, online computing, and so on. More than that, in order to put in place the NIS 1 directive, at the level of CERTRO, they have this order 1323 from 2020 from the minimal technical cybersecurity things that have to be put in place in order to be compliant with the NIS 1 directive. What happened at the European level? At the European level, they discovered that protecting the operating and the digital service provider is not enough. So now it is going to be put in place the NIS 2 directive, and the NIS 2 directive is, I would say, that is exponentially extending the infrastructure that they are going to protect, and by that I mean digital infrastructure, public administration, and space. And it's highly important. It's highly important because in what will happen in Romania with NIS 1 and NIS 2 directive? Well, first of all, the most relevant private companies and the most relevant public institution, the operator of essential services, the digital service provider, they will be forced to put in place a minimal level of security. At the same time, all those measures will create a cybersecurity. Will develop the cybersecurity market, the private cybersecurity market in Romania, which is highly important because this is the IT and the cyber domain. They have a high rate of return on investment. I would like to go to the next slide. What else have we managed to do in this time? Well, we managed to beat Belgium in the final with 15 to 12, if I'm not mistaken, votes. And through that vote, we managed to get into Romania the European Cyber Security Competence Center, ECCC. Now, Romania is in a constant dialogue with the Commission, with the European Union, in order to choose the building, in order to put in place this the first European agency that Romania is having. What is the main role of this European Cybersecurity Competence Center? Yes, improving the cyber resilience, but that is also the role of ENISA. The most important role is to boost the research and development in cybersecurity across EU, because frankly speaking, EU is not at the same level of research and development in cybersecurity like the United States or like the Asian countries. So because of that, and Romania is having the chance to host this European Cybersecurity Competence Center. The main role is to develop new technologies in order to be better protecting and to raise the level of the technological level of EU and making comparable with the US and Asia. What you should know is that this also can be considered a boost for the startups in Europe. And of course, since we are hosting the agency, I'm expecting also that the cybersecurity industry using funds from ECCC will flourish in Romania. Next slide, please. Well, another, I don't know how much are they published in the mainstream media and so on. So I really want to share with you three main ideas that now that are talking a lot about them at the EU level. The first one is to enforce the obligation for smartphone manufacturer to ensure security patches and updates for 7 years. So at least for smartphone, when you buy a smartphone, you will know that for the next 7 years, from the moment that that smartphone was designed, for sure you'll have security patches and updates in order to have at least a minimum level of cybersecurity. Another very interesting EU initiative is to enforce the manufacturer that are producing IoT, and not only IoT, Internet of Things, but smart devices, but also computers, smartphone, tablets, and so on, to label their product from green to red, as they are doing from energy consumption. So the greener is the most secure from the cybersecurity point of view. So when that device was designed, it was used also the concept security by design. So if you buy a red one, you know that it's a cheaper one, but you also have to assume that from a cybersecurity point of view is not at all secure or very unsecure. And the third main initiative that hopefully EU will manage to put in place is to enforce the obligation for manufacturers to specify the documentation from the moment of launch, the lifespan of their technological product. So when you buy something, when you buy, I don't know, a router or tablet or whatever, you will know the number of months or years that the manufacturer will be obliged to provide updates and on that has to do with security. I would like to go to the next slide, please. Well, a little bit, I'll also like to share with you a little bit about national legislative framework. Finally, after a lot of struggles, and I can say that I was one of the supporters, we managed to put in place the National Cybersecurity Directorate in the September 2021. So I would say that it's a baby, this institution. It has, I don't know, a month, or almost a month, or a month and a few days since it was created. Why I was the pioneer? I was the pioneer because some of the activity that the National Cyber Center, part of the SRI, was doing in the public spectrum, well, they really they don't have to, they don't belong necessarily to an institution that is part of an intelligence agency. So what we would like to move the shift on the activity that has to do with relationship with academia, with private companies, and with civil society, to move from the National Cyber Center to the National Cyber Security Directorate, to move it, to move all these things into a, I would say, more not necessarily transparent, because we also were transparent, but in a civil area, not in an intelligence area on law enforcement. So this initiative was supported by 20 institutions. We expect that the National Cybersecurity Directorate will reform civilian capabilities, and we expect them to play a key role. And of course, we will be an honest partner with the new established National Cybersecurity Directorate. I would like to go to the next slide, please. Well, another thing that we were involved in, actually, the new cybersecurity strategy of Romania was written in our headquarters with all the institutions that are part of the National Security Council for Cybersecurity, that is under the presidential administration. The key, the cybersecurity strategy was made public by the Ministry of Digitalization and Research and Development, and now it is put on the floor for approval at the governmental level. The main 5 ideas that I think that I want to share with you today is that in the new, because the old cybersecurity strategy, it became obsolete. So this new cybersecurity strategy has at least 5 main ideas. First is promoting a pragmatic public-private partnership, because staying isolated, is not, we saw in time that is not a good idea. Sharing whatever you are willing to share, it's a very good idea. And always in every step, always the private company will be ahead, at least from a technological point of view. So having a public-private partnership, it's a very good idea. The second main idea is safe and resilient ICT network and system. So we are saying that in the new strategy loud and clear. The third point is resilience through proactive approach and deterrence. So in the past and somehow in the present, if we can compare the cybersecurity attack with 2 boxers, a boxing match, we were the one that were getting the hits, and we just tried to move left and right in order not to be hit by our adversaries. What I can tell you is that the first nation that said that they will become offensive in case of attack was Netherlands, then UK, then United States. So we also have we also adopted this approach in our national cybersecurity strategy. So in case of an attack, we will not just wait, be hit, and say now we managed to discover who that is. We will also respond. The fourth one is consolidated framework, both regulatory and institutional. So in order to have a strategy, a law, and so on, and everything. And the final one, and maybe the most important one, Romania wants to become a relevant player in the international cooperative architecture. And now we have, I would say, mature institution. We have the European agency and so on. I would like to move to the next slide. What is pending and we don't have yet? We do not have a law on cyber defense and security of Romania. Now the initiative now is to the MOD, and we did a lot of work in order to write this law, but it's still not in place. Hopefully next year we will manage to pass this law to the parliament. The main idea that we would like to emphasize in this law is to ensure resilience and protection of the state-owned networks and ICT system, to designate competent authority and create legal framework for cybersecurity and cyber defense capability development. So we would like to know each institution, what are their competencies and their role, what is it protecting in order not to have overlapping. Another important thing is to maintain or restore the state of cybersecurity nationwide, and to separate responsibility of stakeholder, what I just told you, service provider, law enforcement, public institution, and so on. And last but not least, to develop and consolidate cybersecurity culture nationwide. Now I would like to move to the next slide, which I think is the last one, if I'm not mistaken. So that would conclude my presentation. So I told you a little bit about us, a little about the threat during pandemics, and a little bit about what is Romania doing at international national level in order to be more resilient. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you a lot for this very complex presentation, actually, on cyber intelligence in our country and in Europe, because these were some of the highlights I was able to see. You presented what the situation is in Europe, and it's very appropriate that after our discussion about European defense, obviously now we can see how cyber defense looks inside Europe as well. We have a question from one of our participants. As the first cybersecurity manager in Romania, actually we have more questions, they're coming along, so I'm going to start with the first one. And ACC host country, what is your opinion on the heterogeneity of the protocols and equipment used in the network environment?
Well, my opinion is that referring to the new technology, Romania managed to pass a law to the parliament. It is called the 5G law, but actually it's not addressing only the equipment that has to do with 5G. It's addressing all the equipment that has to do with the new technologies. So my idea is that the main role should be on the National Cybersecurity Directorate. We will look at all these companies that are producing those objects from more than a technical point of view. But I think that we should establish like a national laboratory at the directorate level in order to assess also from a technical point of view all those new technologies. Having multiple technology in the market, it's a good thing. What we have to make sure is to make sure that the one that we are installing and using in the Romanian network are the ones that are secure from a cybersecurity point of view, from an intelligence point of view, and also from a technical point of view.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer. A second question would be, speaking of resources and more specifically of talent acquisition and talent retention in your enterprise, what would be, let's say, it says here your dream come true, I would say an ideal scenario or best case scenario, or a dream come true?
Okay, so I'm going to have a more complex answer to that. So my dream scenario is to create a cybersecurity ecosystem in Romania, more in the private market, and of course in the public institution, because we need to have very smart people, very skilled people also in the public institution. But to create a cybersecurity ecosystem in which, by taking advantage of the ECCC, European Cybersecurity Center, by taking advantage of the important amount of money that will be run to these agencies to come with R&D project to boost the startups around the universities and so on. By doing that, we will manage to keep in Romania all those smart people. And more than that, what we did in the past 3 years, we managed to create in 14 universities in Romania, 14, spread all around the countries, master courses, postgraduate courses, and in the last year, even license courses in very practical things that has to do with cybersecurity. And by that, I mean I don't know, malware analysis, security of mobile devices, security of operating system, forensic, pen testing, you name it. So all those courses are very practical. By creating all these environments, mostly in the private market, I'm sure that all those smart people won't go to other countries if they will be well paid and will have a good life in Romania.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the answer. We are pending if there are any other questions, either online or from the audience. Okay, if not, I would like to once again thank you, General, for joining us, for sharing
Thank
all
you.
of the information you did today, and hopefully we'll get to see each other in our future courses or in our future conferences. It would be a real pleasure to have you here back in Resmara.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you once again, and have a successful conference.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, with that we end our third plenary session, and it is now actually the moment to conclude with our conference. Once again, allow me to thank all of our participants who have joined with discussions and questions. Thank again our keynote speakers who you have seen have made quite an effort to join us either physically or online and deliver quite some interesting and hot topics that were debated and discussed all over these 2 days. Furthermore, I'd like to thank all our partners in organizing this conference, our colleagues from Poland, from the War Studies University in Warsaw that joined once again and helped us deliver this conference, Political Research Group, who has, as always, helped us in gathering as much keynote speakers as possible. Thank you, Director, for your help and support, and we'll hope to see all of you here next year for our 17th edition of the conference. Everyone, enjoy your afternoon. Have a good day. Yes, sir. Andrei, yes, please.
Also, if I may, Director, I received a special order from the rector side that this element must be presented for you. So this is a sign of university, and hope that the sign will be will have good place in your desk, and our cooperation, both the Smara faculty, will work next year. Once again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to receive this present for our institution. We hope in the future. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our conference. Have a good afternoon and see you soon.